In Persona, your SP is basically your lifeline. It's what lets you deal damage, use support skills, and heal. And honestly, this isn't even just a Persona thing, it's a core JRPG mechanic in most games. Usually called MP, known as the mana bar, but in Persona it's called SP, or skill points. Either way, it's a resource you're meant to manage carefully. Once you run out of SP, your damage, healing, and support options drop off, and considering how strong some of these skills are, that management really matters. But Persona also gives you another consistent source of damage that people don't have a tendency to talk about. Everything in this game usually follows a trade-off type of system. You want to cast strong magic from a specific persona? That's going to cost you SP. You want to cast physical skills that hit like a truck and have a high crit rate chance? Well, that's going to cost you a lot of HP. There's always some kind of price attached. Except, with this category in particular, not really. So, when you think about it like this, if your SP is low and you don't want to burn HP, what do you really do for damage? Well, you fall back on the most basic rule of human nature. Before personas and before demons, before we had any of this mythological ass power, if we wanted to protect ourselves or hurt something that was intended on hurting us, we would usually just pick up something and start swinging. Yep, that's right. Bats, knives, swords, pipes, guns, fans, whatever is in your hand that could become a tool, you end up using, and Persona leans into this extremely hard, sometimes to the point where these weapons can straight up end up being better than the personas themselves. Before I get into all the nitty-gritty stuff, one thing I love about the weapons in this series is that there's usually always a specific use the weapon has. Either it gives you a boost in stats, causes a health increase, increases your chance of landing an ailment, or it just straight up gives you a skill that is usually given to personas, but you now have that effect infused with whatever weapon you're using. Imagine if you have a persona that's focused on magic and you just fused this puppy you're very proud of, and you want to continue maximizing your damage output. However, you have no more slots that put a good skill on. All the skills that are currently on that persona are skills you want and you don't really want to get rid of them. Well, don't worry, sometimes you can find a sword that has another skill imbued into it that you can use to help your builds. In this case, as I'm showing right now on screen, Lucifer's Blade, which gives you magic ability. Now I could stack this with boost and amp and get more mileage out of my magic based persona. Now, of course this is an endgame sword, but you can find tons of examples of mid-game weapons that are extremely useful for helping out with your better builds. Or you can just abuse stat upgrades. Cause yeah. If you're thinking right now, Legend, chill. You're too geeked out right now. You're too excited. I get it. Royals equipments are very good. I've heard through word of mouth. I've seen it. But they aren't that crazy to be like the first topic you cover, right? No, they indeed are that crazy. Because, ooh, these stat increases weapons needed to be heavily nerfed. They had one chance to fix this from vanilla to royal, and they still didn't do it. So if you didn't know yet by this time, whenever you equip a stat increase in Royal, whether from weapons, accessories, or equips, the stats are doubled due to a glitch in the game. From what I read online, apparently it's not visible in your actual stats. Like whenever you equip a stat boosting item, your personas will usually show the stats as a different color, letting you know what's an equip and what's just a natural stat on the persona. Now you won't actually see it because the bug doesn't show on the persona. So for example, if you equip something, let's say as like +5 magic, right? It will only show +5 magic on the menu and when you pull up your persona. But in combat, your damage will be as if you had like 10 plus magic. So I don't know what's actually going on there. I believe it is something that has to do with the actual combat sense. So yeah, this leads to a lot of characters just straight up being nutty because of their weapons. I talked a lot about this briefly in my previous video covering Persona 5 against Persona 5 Royal. But yeah, Judge of the Dead, which is Makoto's best gun, gives her a +10 to all stats. But because of the glitch, you're actually getting +20 in battle. Do people realize how genuinely nutty that is? You pair that with her getting Concentrate from the Jazz Club, and it's just a pure murder spree. And it's just as insane with the other party members. Joker with the Tyrant pistol gets a nice boost of 10 magic, which is actually 20 because the bug. Not a magic guy? Then you can just go with the Nacharaja for a nice +5 in all stats. Oh shoot, I mean 10. I mean, this is actually just so stupid. And it even gets dumber. Because of the addition of alarms in Royal, you can get these weapons even stronger than they inevitably already are. So that plus 10 turns into a plus 15 because of alarms, which now goes to a plus 30 because of the bug. Are we fucking for real? So you realistically don't even have to jazz club some of these characters to reach 99 in all stats. Like, you genuinely can't make this shit up, guys. And every character gets decent stat boosting weapons. Besides Morgana, Ann, and Ryuji, they don't really have any good weapons. Actually, Ryuji does get a pretty cool attack master effect of a melee weapon. Also, only 2 characters get nothing. Oh yeah, I'm not surprised. Also, Haru doesn't get anything good either, but I have to keep the agenda up, guys. And I know people are gonna ask, what about all the ailment guns and the melee ailment weapons? And honestly, I thought these were kind of just part of the course. Like, yeah, they are nice to have, but after a certain point, when there's so many ways to inflict ailments on your enemy, it's like, okay, I guess. Like, it's not bad, of course, but there's so many easy ways to inflict ailments in this game with items and skills that weapons doing it is kind of just nothing too special. Like, compared to everything else I've mentioned in this video, it's pretty standard in this game, so I'm not gonna really cover it too much. Now, getting into Reload's weapons, thankfully these are less broken as Royal stat equips, and they more focus on utility, which is always something you love to see. Okay, so before I move on to the next category, I actually recently just found this out as I'm editing. So, thanks to my good friend Ivan, I found out that it's not actually ×2. As of recently, some research has been done by the Persona Modding Discord. It's actually ×4. Yeah, take that information in as you will. Naturally, me and Ivan were pretty skeptical about this, so we ran some tests ourselves. I did the agility tests, he did the damage tests, and we were getting around ×3. Not ×2, not ×4, but ×3. And the tests don't lie, I'm pretty sure that's actually what the stat multiplier bug is. So yeah, huge thanks to Ivan for just helping me clear this up in like less than 2 hours, but yeah. Okay, so it's not ×3. After some further research done, as I literally have to make the 3rd edit in this video, it's apparently still ×2, but ×2 plus 3. Yeah, that's not even fully confirmed yet either, so you know what, let's just move to Reload. Fuck this whole category. The weapons provided in Reload are usually nice assists to your character's builds and their strengths. Now, in terms of where you can get these weapons, yeah, it's mostly Tartarus in the antique shop, as in this version of the game, the police store is kinda trash. Most of the weapons he gives you are just there for the sake of, here, this does more damage than your last weapon, which is okay, I guess. Sometimes he does give good HP boosts, which are cool, but nearly all the good stuff you're gonna get is, yeah, all from Tartarus in the antique shop. If you're trying to look for a specific boost skill for a character, well, it's definitely there in the game. You don't even need an accessory half the time. Take Akihiko for example. Now, Akihiko innately already gets electric boost and he gets electric amp on his natural persona, and besides his electricity attacks, he's got a strong knack for doing good physical strike damage with his gigantic fist and late game God's Hand, which of course the game is aware of, and gives you some pretty good equipment for it. In this case, the Fists of Fury, which you can get as early as July and Yaba Shaw Block, and this gives you a strike boost. Now of course Akihiko is stuck with Sonic Punch for a bit, but the moment he gets that gigantic fist during level 39, he is a demon with these gloves. And you can pretty much keep these on him the entire time until you eventually get the double ziggurat from the antique shop. So the game gives Aki his boost and amp for both elements he can use respectively. And mind you, this is just one example of a character they do this for. They do this for most of the Reload cast. Some characters are also built to do one thing very specifically well, and the game also complements that. Take Junpei for example. You can give Junpei a sword infused with Opt Pupil using Masakato's heart item. So the already crit demon is just more of a crit demon now. Also, the design for this sword is really fucking cool. And they don't just only do this for Junpei, they do this for Shinji as well. This is what made me hate Shinji in Reload, because it's so annoying that I already knew what was going to happen to him, and I'm looking at all this juicy stuff they were giving to us. Shinji is not only given an auto rebellion, an auto charge, and he also gets amp and boost weapons. So at this point, just pick your frickin' fancy. You want a better crit rate? Go with auto rebellion. You want to start off battles very strong? Go with the auto charge. I think the most optimal combo on him is probably going to be the strike boost, since amp you can cover on the accessory, and the bloody charge already does the crit plus charge part for you. I mean, you hardly even have to min-max like this. Shinji kinda just blows everything up already existing no matter what weapon you put on him. I find it even funnier that the devs pretty much went, whoa, this auto charge weapon is pretty cool. Y'all like this? What if we just made this shit accessible again for Shinji 2.0? Yeah. I'm not even gonna bother talking about Metis because she actually is just a freak. I've never seen so many good weapons given access to a single character that already explodes everything existing. So you add an auto charge weapon to that, and her already insane damage is just doubled. Yeah, even the Reaper is pretty much just a bitch at this point. The best part is, most of these weapons are at least during the mid ladder, so as long as you put in the work, you'll be able to get them. Now, as for the ultimate weapons, I can understand most of the complaints I'm going to hear on this video, like they take way too long to get, because a lot of people just want good stuff super early, and at least in the mid ladder, not waiting all the way to the freaking end. The other negatives I can see is the stuff required to even make it. So you're going to need a bunch of dead moon husks to make the ultimate weapons, and these aren't exactly the most drop friendly items. Also, you're going to need the heart item of a Pacific persona. Now, thankfully, you can get these from just farming the Reaper and just getting quick level ups on your personas. But getting the gems to make some of this stuff can be very rough, at least in this version. For other versions of 3 like FES, all you really needed for special weapon was any blank weapon and the persona itself. You didn't even actually need all this extra stuff like diamonds nor the heart item. So in Fez, the heart item actually was the accessory. So whatever heart item was dropped from the persona, you could immediately equip it onto your accessory slot once you got it. There was no fusing or none of that stuff. In fact, on the topic of FES, we gotta talk about this specific game for weapons, because this pretty much just had the best freaking weapon system of all damn time. So I talked about the police shop first in Reload, but I want to talk about it in Fez because it's actually one of the most creative things I've ever seen in a JRPG. All weapons in FES that weren't fixed or fused usually had a random effect tied to it, and this was across the entire game wherever you picked them up, not just in the police shop. But the police shop was the best place to get this kind of stuff because you could just save scum for the effects you wanted. Now, specifically for weapons, you can get random ailment increases, you can get random stat increases, random bonus health, a blade with a decent or low chance to crit. It literally all just depends. And this is just the weapon side. Armors would give you different resistances against different elements, and the boots were usually just random evades. Here's all the list of effects I believe can be included in weapons. Now, this doesn't include everything in the game, but this is just so far what I've seen and what I found. Now, this is just straight up freaking amazing. What's even better was that Fez had racist freaking weapons. Yes, Fez was racist. Basically, there's an effect for you doing more damage to a specific race or arcana of a shadow that I didn't show in the list a few seconds ago. By looking at the official guidebook, because the game doesn't actually tell you the amount of damage you're doing for this bonus, for the strongest version, you can get Deadly, which is a 100% boost in damage on the weapon. Like, that is absolutely insane. I used this myself when I did P3 FES without evokers almost a year ago as a challenge run, and I got a bow that did more damage against the priestess that I gave to Yukari. Thus, even for equipment with the same name, their use can vary significantly, which adds a lot of more variety to the gameplay. Now, I don't know why they would remove this in Reload, but to be frank, Portable is the one that did away with it first, and made the equipment only have one static type that doesn't vary between different copies of the same name. Which sucks because I really miss this. Oh, but don't fret, if you wanted to get good effects without having to rely on RNG, all you had to do was just fuse a generic persona from an arcana with a weapon, and it would give you a nice effect, and it was always guaranteed to be that same one each time. Let's take Oberon for example. Let's say you want to fuse your Oberon with a blade or a bow or an axe. Well, since Oberon is part of the Emperor Arcana, you would get Evade Elec after fusing him with your blade, axe, bow, etc. And the same could be said about every other weapon you fuse with the Emperor Arcana. The power of the evade depends on the strength of the persona. Level 99 will give you a high evade, while level 50 will maybe give you like a mid to low level evade. This creates so many ways you can avoid enemies' certain attacks just by having specific personas fused with weapons. And say you wanted to resist the electric damage instead of having evade, well, you would use the Tower Arcana, because the Tower Arcana will always give you a resistance to electric. And I haven't even got to the good part yet. Now, I talked about the ultimate weapons in Reload, but let me talk about the ones in Fez, because they're arguably better and easier to create. Whenever you fuse a weapon with a specific persona, you get a much stronger weapon than the usual Arcana effects. These are all the following special blades you can get from the specific personas. Kuchu Lane, which gives you the Gale Blog, Cert, which gives you Leviathan, Thor, which gives you Mjolnir, Odin, which gives you Gungear, Siegfried, which gives you Balmung, Cybele, which gives you Sabios, Michael, which gives you Deus Sifux, Masakato and his own very blade, Mara and the Evil Hands, Vishnu, which gives you Sharnaga, Beelzebub, that gives you the Corpse Staff, Shiva, that gives you the Pinaka, Ashura, that gives you the Vajra, Chiyu, that gives you the Dreadnought, Metatron, that gives you the Metronius, and lastly Lucifer, which gives you his blade. Going back to Cert, for example, fusing him with any weapon will give you the legendary Leviathan, the two-handed sword which inflicts fire now instead of slash damage, and it gives you a fire boost built into the sword. The sword, for instance, would legit give you more DPS than skills themselves depending on what passives you were carrying. In Fez, they thought about the weapon system so much they even gave damage boosting passives based on which weapon you're carrying. For example, if you pair a fire amp with a fire boost, you're getting 25% from the boost and 50% from the amp. And that was pretty much it for your way of dealing more magic. Except for swords, you could put on the two-handed Swordmaster for an additional 1.5 multiplier that gets more than an average Dyne skill plus its amp and boost. So swords, at least in this case, can do more than Dyne skills. Now the Severes do beat every single weapon, I believe, but remember, these weapons don't cost you any SP to use. There's no drawback, unlike skills, which without a Spellmaster can be very heavy on your SP bar. And the fact that party members could also do this as well, depending on whatever respective weapon they use, is super cool. Like, you can give Akihiko pretty reliable ice damage, which is the most funniest shit ever considering he's an electric attacker. And if the special weapon didn't give you like a boost skill or a special effect, it also just gave you insanely dumb stat boosts. Yeah, this was the best weapon system in all of Persona, and arguably maybe one of the best weapon systems of all JRPG history. Now we have to go to the least intricate and cool one of all three mainline games. There are a few things good about the 4 weapons, like you can get a plus 50 XP boosting weapons for nearly every character at a reasonable point for each, which is cool. Not like getting EXP fast in this game really matters though, with how exploitable the gold hands are, so there's that. There are a few good finds though that you can find throughout the game that are scattered, like the bloody kunai for Yusuke, which gives him a boost for his wind attacks. Well, until he gets wind boost naturally at 44 anyway. Okay, same thing with Kanji. He gets a thunder plate from Deodara's you can get pretty soon, which gives him a Lek boost. Only for him to get that innately at 27. Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Unlike 3, most of the skills that are infused with the weapons in this game kind of suck because the character that uses that said weapon already get that skill eventually anyway. So it's kind of just pointless. The only character that remotely gets an actual good skill from their weapon is Naoto, who gets an ice boost from Frost Shot. So for all the people who say Naoto only serves as a mob clearer, well, with this equipment she actually becomes somewhat good at ice and could even rival Teddy's ice magic herself. So that takes Naoto gameplay haters out the picture, baby. Now for golden stat increases, I thought they were actually decent for some characters. Like I found a 10 plus strength weapon for Chie that was given in the steamy bathhouse, which is extremely early. So I was like, you know what, hey, maybe the stat increases aren't so bad for this game. But then I looked on a different GameFAQs site, and apparently the effect for this weapon is none. So when I actually pulled it up on the actual game, yeah, there is no plus strength for this weapon at all. There's no effect for it. So I don't know what GameFAQs site this was, but I got straight up fed misinfo. So in terms of weapons, nobody really gets anything good for stats, besides, ironically, Yosuke for strength. The worst character to give strength stats to. But you know what, whatever. Honestly, that is roughly all I can really take from 4. 4 doesn't really have a lot of super amazing weapons as the other games. They're still pretty solid. The real issue is that the best weapons, quote unquote best weapons, come from defeating the Reaper with Pacific Party members, and they end up being pretty underwhelming weapons. That's honestly a bit disappointing. Like, what do you mean exhaust high for Yukiko? Who the fuck is ever gonna use this? This is garbage. Wow, Blade of Totsuka, so freaking cool. Love that high crit rate on a blade I literally am never gonna swing because I have Yoshitsune. Why do these exist? Well, that's mostly all for me. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It helps out the channel tremendously. Also, I really like making vids like this, and I got a lot of other stuff planned in the future. So if you want to support me and support what I do, leave a tip at the Ko-Fi. It helps a brother out more than you know, trust me, as I constantly have to balance writing scripts and dealing with annoying teachers in college. Well, that's all for me, you guys. I'll see you guys in another time. Peace out.